K-Wave 6 Radio and our host Kirk Spencer welcome you to our show bringing positive messages to today's world. And now, here's Kirk.
Hello and welcome to K-Wave 6 Radio. Today my guest is Megan Cyrulewski. She is an attorney. She has found her little niche in what she does with her law practice. It's something that makes her comfortable, and she still is accomplishing what she went to school for and what she enjoys doing. She is also an author of a book, which we'll get into later. But here today to talk about Megan's life and some of the things that she has gone through to bring her to where she is right now. While she is a young woman, let her tell her age if that's what she wants to do. You never ask a woman, at least that's what I was taught, never ask a woman her age. Or at least put it this way, you never ask a lady her age. And Megan is definitely a lady, so I won't ask and I won't tell. She's going to tell us about what has brought her to where she is, how she got there, and it's actually more of a build-up to her book, but we'll get there. So welcome to the show there, Megan.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it was definitely a pleasure. When we were speaking off air, we just hit it off bubbly and vivacious. This is going to be one great interview, everyone, so stick around. So, Megan, start from someplace, any place that you find that's comfortable, to tell us about you and what has brought you to the changes and the realization of who you are and your direction for life.
Wow, that's such a huge question.
Yeah, well, I'm just asking you for something to start with right now.
Let me see. I was born in 1978, so that makes me 35 as far as the age is concerned. I won't start all the way back there.
Okay.
Let me see. I could very briefly, after I graduated from college from Grand Valley State University, I worked in the nonprofit sector for about 8 years. And I got married when I was 26. About the time a lot of our friends were getting married and starting to have kids. And, there was something missing from my life, I guess. So I decided, to be one of those that it's never too late to go back to school. And so I quit my career and went back to school, went to law school, and I loved it, even though it's extremely hard. Mm-hmm. I still enjoyed my classes very much. But while I was in law school, I wrote the book because the book is a memoir. But, I went through a very tough time in law school with my marriage and with, a lot of issues that came up during our marriage, like emotional abuse, domestic violence. We had a daughter together, and that became kind of a child custody battle, and I had postpartum. So, I decided, when I was going through this, it's about a 5 to 6 year period of my life that the book is about, and really turned my life around those 6 years there, because before I was still in my 20s, still trying to grow up, and now I'm definitely a grown up, and I'm very content in my life, I think, for the very first time, and it's a nice feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Let me ask you, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Notwithstanding, I don't want to get into details, but can you describe at least your experience with emotional abuse? I mean, everybody pretty much can understand physical abuse. You see a picture of somebody that's been beat up and whatnot, right. But emotional abuse, I don't know if I can't speak for other people, but I assume that there's some people that just don't understand what it means to have emotional abuse.
Right, and I completely agree with you, because this is the main reason why I wrote the book, because I didn't even know I was in an emotionally abusive relationship until I ended up going to the hospital for postpartum, and I just remember these 10 strangers in group therapy said, you are in an emotionally abusive relationship, and you need to get out of it. I'm like, emotionally abusive? What's that? I'm like, is that I mean, that's domestic violence. What? I mean, so I completely understand that, a lot of people don't know what emotional abuse is. And, to give some examples of what happened in my marriage, it started out as my ex-husband would call me names, and he would always call me a joke, and I'm not really sure why he did that. And then it was, the longer our marriage went on, the worse the names got, that I was called worthless. I mean, he would tell me that, no one else would ever want to marry me, so I'm lucky that he married me, and just, all this stuff that just brings your self-esteem so low, and you get to the point where you're like, well, maybe he's right. Maybe no one else will want me, so I guess I'm just going to be with him then. And, it's definitely a part of domestic violence because it's prevalent out there in today's society. A lot of people don't talk about it because they're embarrassed, just like, with a physical domestic violent relationship. And yeah, I mean, people are ashamed. I was ashamed. Nobody knew I was in that marriage until I filed for divorce. And my parents were actually shocked when I filed. And that's when I kind of let them know what was going on. But I just thought, for the most part, that my ex-husband had anger issues. That's pretty much what I told myself.
His was control issue. I'm just listening to you talking about it. His control issues. In other words, make you feel so low, and as you said, nobody else would want you, and you started believing it, and that's a control issue.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's not secure with himself. I've seen that quite several times in my lifetime. Just people with control issues, and the only way I can actually feel secure, and they never actually feel secure, is by trying to control another person. And unfortunately, as you said, a lot of people just don't see that.
Right. And this is the example that I tell people, because it's just, I tell people that anybody can be in an emotionally abusive relationship. It doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter, your social status, whether you're affluent or not. I mean, and this is the example I give. When I was in law school, when all this was going on, I was an intern with the prosecutor's office, working with the special victims. And so during the day in my internship, I would sit with victims of domestic violence, with physical or emotional, and tell them that they're strong enough to leave their abuser. I'd give them my phone number. I'm like, call me at any time, and I'd give them the courage to go on the stand and to face their abuser in court. And then I went home at night to my husband, who was abusing me, and I had no idea.
Yeah.
So that's why I say it can happen to anybody, and you might not know it. Because, I mean, there I was. It was staring me in the face, and I didn't know it.
Can you actually elaborate a little bit more on just that fact, just not knowing that you were there, but you were... In other words, this is probably poorly put, but, it's one thing to point the finger at somebody else and going, I can see your problem, but I can't see my own.
Right. Well, exactly. Yeah. I didn't see it probably because I didn't want to. So I think that I knew something was wrong because my parents have a great marriage. My parents have been married for 43 years. Mm-hmm. And so then that was kind of that shame where I'm like, well, I don't think something's right, but I don't want to get a divorce because then that means I failed. So, I'll just stick with it. But, it's like the little things started to really make my ex mad. Like, I'd ask him to do the dishes, and he would just throw stuff and call me lazy because maybe I didn't do them. And so then it got to the point where I was like, okay, well, I guess I won't ask you to do that anymore. And my day every day was based upon his moods. Like, what mood was he going to be in when he got home from work? Because that's going to dictate the rest of our day.
Yeah.
But you're in it, and sometimes you don't know it, because now looking back, obviously, I can see that. But it's not... That's what's so hard about emotional abuse, is that's not so obvious, which is really why I decided to put my story out there. So hopefully somebody can read my book and say, you know what, this sounds very familiar. I think I'm in this situation too.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And folks, wait till you hear the title of the book. I had to ask her if there was enough room to put art on that book, but anyway.
There is.
But you can't miss what the whole book is about from the title. But anyway, let's get back to Megan. So let's go, if you don't mind. I don't know if there's anything for you to say on this point, but what was life like before the marriage, and say from high school into the college time, and what drove you to go back to school and become a lawyer?
Yeah, I loved college. I loved undergrad. It's high school was okay, give or take. Some of it was good, some of it bad. And I live in Michigan, so I went to Grand Valley State University, which is about 2.5 hours from where I live. So it was kind of like, okay, it's close enough to come home, but far away that I need to live there. Mm-hmm. And that was perfect. And I loved college because it just totally broadens your world, and so it's much more about academics. It's more of just about, learning the world and learning your place in the world and what do you want to do. And, I was very involved with a volunteer organization that I had a life-changing experience. During my sophomore year, I volunteered on a Native American reservation in South Dakota for a week. Mm-hmm. It's called Alternative Spring Break. And we just kind of we played with the kids there and repainted and rebuilt some of their places. But that kind of showed me, that there's more to life than just, I guess, myself. Mm-hmm. And that was, that's a little eye-opening when you're 19, 20, you know. So I graduated with a degree in journalism because I wanted to go out and write the stories and be on Dateline and however, when I moved back home, to be on Dateline, you really have to start at the bottom somewhere, like in Idaho. No offense to people in Idaho. But I really wanted to move out of my parents' house. So I pretty much kind of fell into the nonprofit sector and moved into an apartment with my friend Jessica, who I'm still friends with. And it was great. My 20s was great. We had a good time, going out and not really worrying about that much and just working and shopping and living life. And, I decided to go back to law school because after 8 years of being in the nonprofit sector, that's when the recession hit. And I really just was kind of done asking people for money. Mm-hmm. And I just really kind of wanted more, I guess. And I really thought, here's the funny thing, I've always wanted to go to law school, I just never thought I was smart enough. So I thought, well, if I take the LSAT and if I pass it enough to get into law school, then I guess I'll go. And I did, and I accepted, and I went, and I graduated. So, and here we are.
We're about to go into a break, but when we come back from the break, I'd love to hear you talk about why you felt that you were not smart enough, and then what actually got you to see, hey, I can do it if I really apply myself. So if you don't mind, we'll do that as soon as we come back from the break. Is that okay with you?
Yep, that works.
Sounds good. So everyone stick with us. We'll be right back. We're just going to take our first break, and we'll be right back with Megan Cyrulewski.
Are you ready to put an end to thinking about how you wish it were and take action? Take this step to find out more by going to coachingbyria.com. And you can receive your free consultation session with Coach Ria. Coach Ria is a certified professional life coach with a passion to help make the difference in the world.
Hi, I'm Doug Harold. You're listening to the K-Wave 6 Radio with my friend Kurt Spencer. I'm with Time and Eternity, timeandeternity.net. I'm really glad you're listening to the K-Wave 6 Radio.
Hi, and welcome back. Our guest today is Megan Cyrulewski. And just before the break, we were talking about why she felt she wasn't smart enough for law school. And she's going to build into that and go into the other side of how the physical abuse, excuse me, not physical, the emotional abuse came in and what it did to her and how she overcame it. So Megan, you got the floor.
Oh, thank you. The whole, feeling that I wasn't smart enough for law school, I think that actually started for me way back in grade school because I have an older brother and he is extremely smart. 4.0. He was in all the advanced placement classes. And, I'm 2 years younger than him. And so I was coming up the rear. And I remember ever since first grade, all the teachers, they take attendance at the beginning of each school year. Mm-hmm. And they would all say, "Oh, you're Jeff's sister." And I was like, "Yep, I am." It's like I never had a name. And, it's like I was never Megan. I was Jeff's sister. And, and then the teachers would think that I was just like him. So if I got like a C on something, they would always be like, "Oh, well, your brother did this or your brother did that." So kind of started like way back in grade school. So I definitely went the opposite way of my brother. So while he was like valedictorian of our high school in his class, I was not. I was not even on the honor roll. I played sports because that was my thing. I danced and I played softball. And it wasn't until I got to, well, actually it was ninth grade freshman year. I remember my biology teacher, I got like a D on a test or something. And she said to me, she goes, "You know what? Your brother aces class. You should have him tutor you." Yeah. I was like, and she said that in front of the whole class. And it was really embarrassing. Because, I was 14 or 13 or whatever. And so I just had that feeling ever since then that I was just never academically smart. And that's how I just portrayed myself that way, I guess. And so it was very enlightening when I went to my undergrad into college because, the first semester I wasn't really about academics. I was kind of like, "Hey, where's the parties at?" Mm-hmm. And then when I got my first report card, my parents were like, "Oh, if you don't do better, you're going to move back home." I was like, maybe I should do better because I don't want to move back home. Yeah. And when I started actually applying myself, that's when I realized that I was pretty good at academics. I was never going to be the 4.0. My brother is extremely intelligent and he's got this, the photographic memory that, I wish I had. But when I applied myself and I was able to do it, I graduated, from Grand Valley with a 3.0, which may not be big to some people, but it's huge to me because I was never above that in high school. And so, when it finally came time to, take the test to get into law school, I wasn't expecting to get, a 180 on the LSAT. I just thought, I'm just going to do my best and do what I can do. And I did, I don't even remember my score on it, to be honest, but it was good enough to get me into a couple of, law schools here in the Michigan area. And, and again, like, once I got to law school, I knew that I wasn't going to be at the top of the class. I knew I wasn't going to be in the top 10% of the class. And that was okay with me because I wanted to learn the law and I wanted to do the best that I could do. And so I think that's the background from where that came from. And the more that I was, it's like there were some classes that obviously I did better in and some classes I didn't. And that was okay. And I was okay with that.
Actually, you were talking about your brother's photographic memory.
Oh, yeah.
And did he literally have a photo? Does he? I shouldn't say did he. Does he literally have a photographic memory?
He does. Because you know what? Because my daughter Madeline has it. My daughter Madeline reminds me of my brother, which is kind of odd in a way. But I see it with her because, she will, if I get a book from the library, she'll want me to read it over and over and over again. And then until she memorizes it. And it doesn't take her very long to memorize it. I mean, maybe like twice. Maybe I have to read through it twice. And she memorizes it. And she's only 3.5. Oh. So I just remember my brother, like, he aced everything. And it used to make me so mad because I never really saw him study that much. And then I realized, he's got that photographic memory, man. He went to University of Southern Cal and graduated in 3.5 years. So, Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He is extremely intelligent.
All right. I'm going to deviate just a little bit. So bear with me, Megan and audience. We're talking about photographic memory. Now, let me ask you this. How was his understanding? And there's a reason why I'm asking this.
Oh, you're going to get me in trouble if he ever listens to this radio show.
Well, okay. Your experience with people that have photographic memory.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're going to get me in so much trouble.
All right, let me stop you. You can work around that.
That's good.
When I was a child, there was a great big emphasis on memorization. Memorize, 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 memorize. And we used to do that. And a great deal of the people that I grew up with are still into memorization. However, what I found was that memorizing is one thing. In other words, that's teaching you what to think.
Right.
But when it comes down to it, it doesn't seem to give you an understanding of what you're doing. Now, I'll give you another example. I had a friend who is now, I'm quite sure he's passed. He wanted to become a brain surgeon, and he went to college. This is something that he told me about many years ago. I was still in my 20s at that time. That's why I say many. Anyway, he had a stroke, and I met him after the stroke, and I found out that he was a senator for the state that we were living in at the time. But he told me, he says, I actually didn't want to become a senator. I became one by default. He says, I was in medical school, and I was in my graduate studies, and I was in an intern. And I really wanted to become a brain surgeon. It's kind of like hearing that joke from the movie. He says, well, it's not like you're a rocket scientist. Well, actually, yes, I am. So he wanted to become a brain surgeon, but his memory, he says, was a photographic memory. He says, I could tell you what page, I could tell you what paragraph, what sentence, I could tell you even the pictures that are on the page. He says, but while I was in my internship, and I'm actually realizing that I could memorize the whole book, but when it came to doing a brain surgery, he says, I realized that I did not have the ability to think beyond the book. So if it wasn't covered in the book, I wouldn't be able to figure out what to do next. So he eventually dropped out, and he says, well, I don't need to be able to understand politics to be in it, so he went and became a politician. So, unfortunately, but, well, kind of a humorous way of putting it, he says, I don't have to think to be a politician. So,
right.
So that's what I'm getting at, is just understanding what you're really reading versus just, I know it by what I've read, and I can explain what I've read, but can you explain it from a point of understanding? That's a different thing.
Yeah, and looking back, like I said, I kind of felt bad for my brother because, like I said, he's very intelligent, and he went to University of Southern California because he wanted to major in film. And I remember a lot of his teachers saying, well, that's such a waste. You're so smart. Why don't you be an attorney? Why don't you be a doctor? Why don't you be something? And, and he wanted to be in film. And so he does have that creative side to him. Mm-hmm. I think he's moved past the more memorizing academia and definitely spread his wings into the creative side. And I think that's a nice balance for him now because, we did talk years after, high school and come to find out he was jealous of me because of sports and I was jealous of him because of his academia. So and we didn't, talk about that till we were 22.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting. It's very interesting when that I remember that phone conversation when I was in college and I always looked up to him and he was like, no, he's like, I was jealous of you because you knew how to play sports and he wasn't very athletic and that's what he wanted to do. So I think he's living a very nice, balanced life now, doing what he wants to do in California, which is so important, for your life to be happy. So he went and did what he wanted to do and didn't listen to what other people told him he should have done. And he's an inspiration to me in that way.
That is so wonderful to hear. This is what this series of programs are about right now. It's just people that are finding what makes them happy, and when you're happy, you can share that happiness with others. As a lot of people say, it's actually giving back.
Yeah.
You can't give back something that you don't have. So, yeah, you have to find your own happiness first, then you can be a person that can give back to, or gives to anybody for that case. But anyhow, now that we've covered that,
right.
Let's continue on with your college.
Yes.
Or, going back to law school.
Yeah, like I said, once I got in, I was really focused on, I really wanted to be a prosecutor. So I was really into, to the criminal law. I'm a true crime junkie. I love, Forensic Files, Dateline. I love reading the books. But I made myself, have 3 internships during law school to get the full gamut of experience. So my first one was with Federal Immigration Court in Detroit. And that was interesting, to say the least. And I had to write up, the decisions and do some law research. And I really liked the research part of it. And then, like I said, my next internship was with the prosecutor's office, which I liked that too. I actually liked working, with the victims of the crime and giving them the courage to get on the stand and testify. And then my third one was actually with my divorce attorney. So, and that was more of a huge learning experience because Don McGinnis is his name, and he's fantastic. And he actually would give me assignments like writing my own divorce papers, So, yeah, so that was definitely a huge learning experience. But, I came out of law school and, I leaned more towards court mediation because court mediation is becoming so huge, at least in Michigan. I can't speak for the rest of the country, but I know, in Michigan, I live near Detroit, and the dockets are so full of cases, and judges are just so bogged down. And I think mediation, it really works, because it brings the two parties together and to come to a resolution themselves instead of pitting one against the other in a courtroom, because a courtroom's intimidating enough.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely, I'm an advocate of mediation. I've done my civil mediation training. I just finished up my domestic relations training. I'm hoping to open my mediation practice next year, and that's definitely the direction that I want to take my career in.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask her a question about immigration.
Oh, goodness.
That's, not a big question, but just a little general question about that, and because that's such a big issue in the news these days, so let's go with that. In the meantime, please stick with us, and we will be right back with my guest, Megan Cyrulewski.
Hi, this is Pat Kammer, author of Love's Voice Changes You, Book 1. And I now have Book 2, which is called Hello Awesome, Message from Spirit in Pat's Patters. Buy your book from Amazon.com.
Hi, this is Amy Young of JSJ Phone. We are providers of junior iPhone, iPad, iPod, also Samsung, Sony, Nokia parts and accessories at very good quality and low prices. We sell to individuals, and companies have 3 to 5 days delivery time by DHL or UPS. We do delivery in 24 hours after payment confirmed. For more information, see our website www.jsjphone.com www.jsjphone.com. Contact me, Amy Young, mailbox emy@jsjphone.com, or by phone 0086 134 1869639 by Skype emy.yang2012.
Hey everybody, this is Jason Pockrant of Live to Give over at jasonpockrant.com, and you are listening to K-Wave 6 Radio.
Hi, and welcome back. Before our break with Megan Cyrulewski, we were talking about some of her experiences in her career and education, understanding, photographic memory, all those wonderful things. But I want to come back to the time that she was an intern in the immigration office and some of the things that you learned there. And the biggest question I actually wanted to ask was, there's people still immigrating to Detroit with a failed industry there? What's there to move there for? And then you can give a little experience about working there.
Yeah, there's still people from Detroit. We border with Canada.
Yeah.
So, we have the Ambassador Bridge and everything, and that's where a lot of the because I know when you think of immigration, you don't really think of Canadians so much, but look at Justin Bieber. We're trying to get him out of America, which would be really nice. That's actually kind of a lot of the cases that the Detroit Federal Immigration Court gets. But, we also have Dearborn, which is a huge Arabic community here. I think, is it one of the largest in the country? I think, actually.
The last I heard, it was the largest.
Yeah, it was the largest. Yeah, so a lot of those cases come to our courts as well, people that are trying to get asylum. Those are the biggest ones, trying to get asylum from, places in the Middle East or from the places in Africa. We don't really get too many immigrants from, Mexico coming up to Michigan. Mm-hmm. So, it's definitely, I think those three predominant ones are the Canadians and the Middle Eastern and immigrants from Africa that are trying to get asylum. And I worked on 5 cases when I was there, and I agreed with 4 of them that I felt that they should have been granted asylum. One of them, I really felt like, this guy, he is from Mexico, and he was in the country undocumented for, I think, 30 years. And, he was trying to apply for asylum, saying that he was scared to go back, to Mexico. And I wasn't sure about that, because he also admitted that he went back and forth from Mexico to Michigan illegally like 8 times or something within the 30 years. So, and not getting too much into the case, I just felt like that one was kind of like he was kind of grasping for straws to try to find something. But I definitely felt like the people that filed should have been given asylum.
Let me ask you this. This seems to be a little surprising.
Okay.
You're saying that Canadians are trying to get into the United States, and it's kind of weird because...
Oh, it is weird. Believe me.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird. I understand that a lot of them want to come here that are professionals of some sort, especially of the entertainment industry, such as William Shatner from Star Trek fame. Right. He's Canadian, and there's a bunch of other ones that had actually established themselves somewhat in Canada before coming to the United States. But people are looking to, I want to get out of the United States, so they're going to Canada.
Exactly.
So,
and then here we are in Detroit.
Yeah, taking the Canadians and going, what the heck are you doing over here?
Yeah, like I wanted to ask someone, be like, why? I mean, you guys have, a great healthcare system there.
Uh-huh.
All seem to be friendly. I mean, hockey is great. I don't know why. I mean, I do not have the answer to that. I can't base it on just one case, because this one case, they're looking for asylum for a specific reason. I don't want to go into that.
Yeah.
It baffles me. I don't know. Not saying that I'm not against the United States at all. I love Michigan. I love, the United States. I've been to Canada a few times. I like it there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me hit on a little. I don't know how much you want to get into this, but is my show for those who don't know. I always tell my guests that if I ask a question that they're uncomfortable answering, they have the right to say, no, I'd rather not get into that. So this is going to be one of those questions. But, yeah, Dearborn, Michigan is, as you said, more than likely, I don't know the current statistics in the United States, but it is supposedly the largest Muslim or Arabic community within the United States. Yes. And your own personal opinion, this is all I'm asking for, it's just a personal opinion, about a religion that's always saying peace, but they're looking for asylum. How do you put the two of those together, from your own experience, especially as a lawyer?
Yeah, again, I did work on a couple cases where they were coming from the Middle East asking for asylum because they were scared of where they were living. I think, that's a hard question to answer. And, you're not the only one who's asked me that question. I had a lot of people ask me that question when I interned in the immigration office. Mm-hmm. And you're probably not going to like my answer, but I really think it's just dependent on each case. I mean, each case is just different. And I can't, now after working in the immigration office and working on separate cases, I can't, answer that question as, a whole, I guess, look, if that even makes sense. Mm-hmm. It's such a general question to me that, I guess I feel a little uncomfortable kind of answering that as a general question. I think it really honestly depends on a case-by-case basis, I guess, is the best answer I can give you, which is probably not the best answer you wanted.
Well, no, that's fine. Let me change it just a little bit. There has been, and I'm actually looking for in the future, the guy who made this particular video. Now, first of all, I'll say had because there aren't too many Muslims, at least if there are down here in Mexico. So I can't say that I have any Muslim friends here, personal, face-to-face, but I do have some Muslim friends still. When I was teaching at this nonprofit organization here in Mexico, they're an agricultural company or organization, since they call them a company. They did get a lot of interns from anywhere around the world, literally. And one of my students was actually an Iranian woman, just a little bit older than you. And very nice woman. She used to hang around with me a lot because we have a lot of cultural similarities, even though I'm not Iranian
Right.
or I'm not from the Middle East. But she's one of the moderates, and the guy that I met just before her, he's from Iran, and he was another moderate, and they sent me pictures and showed me Iran and basically how secular it was. Mm-hmm. And if you've seen some pictures of even Pakistan and other places like that, back in the 60s, they were just pretty much a Western type of state. Yeah. But the way they dressed, the way the women dressed, they were in school, they would just walk down the street in just similar clothes to what you wear, I would assume, put it that way, because I haven't seen you either. But anyhow, the guy that did this interview, and I stand with what he was saying, there are moderates in Islam where they just look like anybody else in the world, but what he is fighting and what some others are doing, and you don't hear about it in the news, because everybody's going, well, how come moderates don't do anything, and they're all there, but they're just allowing this to happen. Right. How do you fight against someone who is a radical? Because we use that word a lot with Islam. There's the radical Islamics. And then there are those who are just like, no, I just want to be a part of the world. I don't want to fight anybody. I don't want to do all this stuff and that. And so we're hearing and seeing in the news where the radicals now, they're not only attacking Jews, they're attacking Christians. Hanging them, beheading them, and they're actually showing this, unfortunately, on YouTube. But you can avoid it. But right. Has that been, just as a general statement, has that been something that you have experienced when working with those who are seeking asylum from Muslim countries?
Yes, definitely. It's usually, the people seeking asylum are usually, families with kids that just want to experience a new way of life. I mean, they don't want to live in a war-torn country anymore, and they're scared for their lives. And I had one woman, who testified. I wasn't in court to her testimony. I had to, listen to it, because it was recorded. And I mean, she'd been in the country, and she was still, traumatized from what happened when she lived back. And I don't remember exactly where she lived, but it was in the Middle East. Because I think her husband came over first, and then she came over with her kids, and it was, gosh, I think their car almost got hit by a bomb or something like that, and on their way over to the United States. And like I said, it's, again, it is a case by case, definitely. But I do feel like the people that file for asylum are just, they want to live peacefully, and they don't want to live in this war-torn nation, and they definitely don't want their kids to grow up there, which is completely understandable. So they come here for a new life, and I think that they deserve to be here for that new life.
Yeah, exactly. Let me see. Before we go in for a break, because we have a few minutes before we go there. Okay. Let me see. Let's get back into... I know we're kind of zigzagging through her life here, folks, so bear with us here, but I just thought that would be an interesting segue, if you will. Let's go back into graduate school for law, and you were married then.
Yes.
And even though you're looking back at this now, when do you believe that this emotional abuse started, and how?
It started before I even married him, which is actually the first chapter of my book, which I released on my blog like back in March. And while most people, were their comments were positive, a lot of them were, the typical, well, why did you marry him if he treated you like this before you even got married? And I mean, what can I say? I was 26. I was in love. All my friends were getting married. I was definitely in that, oh, well, you're getting married, well, I can too kind of mode. I mean, like I said before, I have definitely grown up since I got married. But no, it was there before. But again, I was like, well, he's just got some anger issues. We'll work it out. It will be fine. And no, that was his way of manipulation from the very beginning. That's really all he knows how to do in relationships. Is I don't think he has the capacity to love. I think he manipulates very well.
Well, I won't get into a discussion about that one, but I think everybody has the capacity to love. It is just in my experience anyway, people they find their security in their own community, and I would say he experienced, I don't know the guy, but he experienced it somewhere in his life, probably, hear me, probably from his parents or somewhere in his family.
Oh yeah, he had a horrible childhood.
Yeah.
I'm not taking that away from him at all. Yeah, he didn't have a great upbringing.
He just has to identify it for himself and understand this is who and what I am. And once he gets past that, he will accept himself, and then he can make his changes from there. But he has to do it for himself, not for everybody else. Yeah. I think you and I understand that already.
Yeah, and that's what frustrates me about him, because there is a good person in there. I mean, I wouldn't have married him otherwise. Yeah. And we did have our fun times, our good times, and he needs to realize that, he's not going to be able to get through, these issues without some kind of treatment or anything, and he just won't do it, and it frustrates the heck out of me. And I wish he would, but like you said, I can't force him to. No. And he's had all the opportunities in the world to, and he just won't. And I don't know why.
Well, no, it's something he has to accept in himself first, and it's hard for people to accept their own shortcomings. Anyway, before we continue on to this, we're going to take our last break. Stick with us with my lovely guest, Megan Cyrulewski, and we'll continue with this when we come back from this break. Stay tuned.
Do you need a website or a webmaster for your business or hobby? A wordsmith for a research paper, or for a script, an article, or for a language translator? Do you need an audio or visual project created or edited? Contact K-Wave 6 Productions at www.kwave6productions.tk for all your website, writing, audio, and visual needs. Our rates are competitive and our services are excellent. That's K-Wave 6 Productions at www.kwave6productions.tk or email us at info@kwave6productions.tk.
Hello, this is Chad C. Meek, executive producer of Giant Rock the Movie, the greatest UFO story ever told. You are listening to the K-Wave 6 radio show with Kirk Spencer.
Hi, and welcome back. In the last few minutes that we're going to do the show with my guest, Megan Cyrulewski. As a matter of fact, let me spell her name for you. It's Cyrulewski. Did I actually spell that correctly?
Yep.
Okay. And we're going to continue with our discussion on emotional abuse. And she's going to go into that and how that actually inspired her to write her book, which now I'll tell you the title is, Who Am I? How My Daughter Taught Me to Let Go and Live Again. So, Megan, please do continue.
Okay, I decided to write my book because, like I said before, when I was in the hospital, I learned, that there is emotional abuse and that people don't know about it. And so, there's actually two reasons why I wrote my book. Definitely the first one is the emotional abuse message, and I do have a chapter in my book that talks about the signs and kind of lists the signs of emotional abuse. For people that may not recognize it, like myself. And the second part of my book that I wanted to put out there was postpartum depression, because, again, when I was diagnosed with that, I fought that. And I just thought, no, there's no way I have postpartum. I love my daughter, and there's such a stigma against that, and unfortunately I hate to, use her name, but, people associate Andrea Yates, how she killed her children. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that's still the stigma that's there with postpartum for a lot of people. And, people would ask me, oh, do you feel like you want to hurt, Madeline? I'm like, no. I'm like, mine was actually the opposite. I wanted to kill myself because I thought that I was not a good enough mother for her. And, that's a really hard thing to come to terms with. The fact that, you gave birth to this child, you love this child so much that you just don't think you're good enough for her. And, that took about a year of intense therapy, a couple trips back to the hospital, and some, prescription drugs that I definitely needed to get over that. And that's, definitely, the second part of my book is that, women really, I mean, if you feel that way, there's nothing wrong with getting help, and you shouldn't feel ashamed of having to go and get help for it, because you need to be better for yourself and for your child. And I just wish that stigma would go away.
Mm-hmm. Actually, at the beginning of the show, you did talk about being in a group therapy, but you didn't say that you were in the hospital.
I was, yeah.
Would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I was about 2 months after I gave birth to Madeline, and I remember I called my doctor one day in a panic because, I have anxiety disorder already. I was 19 when I was diagnosed with that. So I just thought I was panicking, and she was like, no, you know what, Megan, you need to go to the hospital. So I thought, okay, we'll go to the hospital. What are they going to do? Like, keep me there and give me some, Xanax? Okay. Well, no, when I got there, it's like I talked to a social worker, and she wanted to admit me to the mental health ward, which is, the psych ward. Mm-hmm. And, I just remember, crying because I was in tears because I was like, I'm not crazy. Like, why do you want me to go there? I'm not crazy. And, I ended up, spending 5 days there, and it really isn't what people think it is. Mm-hmm. I met people from all walks of life that were having their own issues, and we all came together in group therapy, and found out that we could help each other with our life experiences. So and it's I was there in February of 2011, and then I went back again in July of 2011 for another week because I could feel myself slipping back. Mm-hmm. And some of my friends thought that was a drastic move, but you know what? I knew that I needed to do something, and I needed to get help for it. And it's a very surreal experience when you sit there and you pour your life out to 10 strangers, and they help you with what they've gone through in their life. And it's really great, actually, to be honest.
Actually, that was that's part you just put in there. That was an unexpected insertion into the conversation. Even when we were speaking about that off air, you didn't mention that, and it was just, it's very interesting. So if you don't mind, mm-hmm. I'm going to assume, because I've never been in a mental hospital. My mother used to be a psych nurse, but that was it. So I would visit with her up in where she worked every now and then, but right. Tell me, my assumption is that what your social worker and your doctor were just trying to do was taking you out of the situation for, as you're saying, for a week at a time. I'm assuming this was only for 2 weeks, one in early 2011 and then mid-2011. It's just taking you away from your situation so you could actually breathe and just deal with you and the issue that you're experiencing. Would that be a correct assumption?
Yeah, that's very true. It was a week because, number one, they prescribed me a few medications when I was there. So number one, the purpose is to see if these medications are going to work mm-hmm. before they let you out. But yeah, it's definitely the second and the biggest one is, I definitely needed to get away from the situation. I needed to be pulled out of that. I needed to be, away from my daughter and away from my ex-husband, because the first time I went was before I filed for divorce. So I just needed to be in a neutral, safe place that I had people to talk to. that, my doctor was there,
Mm-hmm.
and that, I didn't feel pressured to leave. My doctor's, when it got time to the end, he's like, well, I'm going to, release you tomorrow unless you want to stay. And I was like, no, I can go back. I have to go back at some point. But it, because it definitely worked, because when I got out of the hospital and I came home, the first thing I told my parents was, I'm filing for divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I would have done that if I hadn't have gone, but it needed for me to step away from that situation and to be in that neutral zone,
Mm-hmm.
and have that intense therapy. Yeah.
And realizing that the problem is not really yours as far as you're experiencing it. Yes, you're part of it, but you weren't the source of the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. Wonderful. So tell us how that actually works into your book.
Yeah, it works into that because, like I said, it definitely took a lot for me to open up about all of these things. Being in the psych ward, the postpartum, the emotional abuse, the anxiety disorder, everything, the child custody divorce. It was such a crazy, like I said, like 5-6 years of my life, and I just feel like I said, if I can open up and take some of the stigma out of psych wards and take some of the stigma out of postpartum, and have people realize that emotional abuse is just as prevalent as domestic violence, physical abuse, then writing the book was worth it, and putting myself out there was completely worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I wanted to write it.
So how did because the title doesn't leave a lot for the imagination otherwise, but How My Daughter Taught Me to Let Go and Live Again. Explain that.
It's very funny because, people who know me now, who might not have known me earlier,
Mm-hmm.
I'm very overprotective of Madeline.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, speaking of which, how old is Madeline anyway?
She is 3.5. She's not 3. Don't call her 3. She's 3.5.
Yes, remember those times. Yes.
So
this is going to be interesting to hear how your daughter taught you to let go and live. That's good.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Growing up, I never wanted kids. Ever. Even
Mm-hmm.
when my ex and I got married, we didn't want kids. That's one of the reasons why we got married. Because we were like, oh, we're going to travel. We don't want to have kids, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Things change. And, I firmly believe that if I did not have Madeline, I would still be in that marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I say, you know what? She taught me to let go of the marriage because I had to. I had to for myself, but more importantly for Madeline, because she could not grow up in that environment. No way. No way. I was not going to see my daughter become a shell of who she was, which is what I became after being, in that marriage. And so she taught me to let go of the marriage, and she taught me to live again, because I think one of the greatest joys of parenthood is to watch the world through your child's eyes. It's a whole new world once you look through your child's eyes, and just, everything is just brighter and happier. And, she makes me want to get up every morning, because for a time there, I dreaded, getting up, and she just makes me want to live. She just makes me want to live. And it's such a great, wonderful, fantastic, awesome feeling. And she may be a little spoiled, but however, I think she deserves it.
Yeah. Well, she's only a child once, and as long as you don't continue with that, it'll be fine.
Right. Exactly. Look at she. 27 hours of labor means nothing to that girl, because when it comes down to it, Grandpa is her best friend, who she tells us all the time that Grandpa is her best friend. So,
All right, Grandpa, there you go. There's your plug right there on the radio.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, the other day, she wanted to go to the Disney store at the mall. And I said, Madeline, because we were just there, and I just got her a couple of stuffed animals. And I'm like, Madeline, we can't go again. She's like, where's Grandpa? I'm like, what? So if Grandpa takes you, is he going to buy you everything? And in this tone of voice, she goes, of course he will. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. So needless to say, he is wrapped around her little finger. Poor her.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, before we go, tell us, let's see, you have a website, and you mentioned your blog. So the blog and the website all together?
Yep, it's all together.
Good. What's the website address?
It is my name, so it's www.megan, MEGAN, CYRULEWSKI.com. And you can go on there and find my blog. My book just got put on Amazon yesterday for pre-release, so I was so excited. I think I told you when I called you this morning, I was like, guess what? You're the first interview I can say you can go buy my book after you listen. It's very exciting. So yes, and it has the book link on there. So go there and click on that and buy my book, and you'll love it. I promise you will.
Sounds interesting so far. Mm-hmm. So let's see, and they also have links to what? Twitter, Facebook, what?
Yeah, the Twitter, Facebook. I have links to a volunteer organization that I am involved in here in Troy. I have links to, domestic violence sites, and then a couple of my friends have like small businesses, so I put their links on there too. Yeah, and I think, you can contact me through there. Yeah, pretty much everything is on there. And my publisher. Don't forget my publisher, Black Gold Books.
Yeah, he definitely wants to know about that one. Okay. Right. Well, Megan, thank you for being here. Everyone else, I just want to remind you, you can find all of our links on the home page for listening to the show. If you're listening to it from some other point of view, I'm glad that you're here. But you can also use podcast.com, iTunes, Stitcher.com, and the RSS feed. All of them are computer and smartphone friendly. You can subscribe to the website, and you can subscribe to your favorite venue for listening to the show through the home page, and you can download them. It's always free. And we're going to have Megan back sometime in the future. She's already agreed to come back. So, Megan, thanks once again for being here.
Thank you. I enjoyed it very much.
So did I. And everyone else, we'll talk to you soon. Have a wonderful week. Be well.
Thank you for being part of our audience. For more information about K-Wave 6 Radio and the services we offer, go to www.kwave6radio.tk. Have a wonderful day.